How's everybody doing today? We are live and on time. Everything went smooth. Maybe now everything's behaving correctly on Streamlabs and Yahoo and Yahoo. That's a name. Why did I say Yahoo? Google. Because they own YouTube. That's what I meant to say. Um, see, someone's asking about the TiVo stuff or homers or whatever. I do have an update on that, and I'm not quite happy with their response. So the the response I got back from the rep, and while I'm chatting about this, go ahead and post your guys' questions in chat so I have questions to answer. I do have some things. This could be a turn into a Tim Works on a Printer stream too if we don't have enough questions. Um, because I do have the Easy ABL mount done for the Sunlu S8. I do not have an upgraded layer cooling fan setup printed, but I do plan on doing that. But anyways, so I sent them a message last night with the pictures of the damaged E-driver and the MKS Gen L board that was in that machine, and I did double check. They sent us a Tarantula RS, and the Tarantula RS is supposed to come with an MKS S Gen L. So the first reply back I got from them was, I will check if we have S Gen L main board or not so far, because only the stock for the main board, that's the SKR seams. So obviously some translation there, but how it sounds like is that they don't have the S Gen Ls, and it looks like they might be using SKRs at some point. I said, okay, but the product page says it comes with an MKS S Gen L. I received the MKS Gen L. Are you shipping the Tarantula RS with a Gen L and S Gen L? And he said the S Gen L during March through June, that's out of stock. We tested the Gen L, same printing result for S Gen L, so we decided to use the Gen L. So basically, they're lying on their product page. They're stating that I can't see the point of going to the Tarantula RS or any of them, to be honest, because they're literally switching the main boards. And here's the problem: the main board is an 8-bit board that I got in mind. That is an older board, and for the record, the Gen L is a decent board. However, that's not what the product page states. There's a big difference. There's a big difference between a 32-bit board and an 8-bit board, especially when you're commanding a higher price for the machine like they are. It's a kit printer for $300. That's already a hard sell. But now you're telling me that you guys are basically just throwing whatever boards you can get in there. I know for a fact that the SGNL boards are readily available because I deal with an MKS rep, and they can get me hundreds of them right now if I place an order and have them here in a couple weeks. So I also was, I think I'm going to save a lot of this for the stream, because I also had a bunch of other people reach out to me about what happened with the rebranding and people getting screwed over by them. So at this point, I would recommend that you guys stay away from homers or TiVo, because there's a lot of, as the kids say, sus stuff happening with that company. And I had quite a few people coming out of the woodworks to let me know about the stuff that they're doing and have done in the past. And it kind of confirms my suspicions of them. I didn't really have any actual grounds to be like, yeah, they're kind of shady. It was more of like a feeling, but the stuff I heard last night about them from multiple people, and doing my own digging on what happened here and how businesses work in China, especially when they, default on payments and stuff. They're not a company I'm going to do business with, and I'd recommend you guys do the same, because them randomly swapping out the boards to, especially an inferior one, the Gen L is inferior to the S Gen L, big difference. And he did not even acknowledge the issue with the E driver. So I'm pretty confident if I turned that on and applied power to it, it would probably smoke that driver, just because there's physical damage on that potentiometer. So there's that. I don't know what the follow-up's going to be. I'm going to stick to our review guidelines that we have laid out on the site to allow for more time. I believe the allotment is 2 weeks. I have to actually look up our own policy, but it's on th3dstudio.com. Should be at the bottom here. Yeah, review and testing policies. So I believe we said 2 weeks. Yeah, manufacturers will have 2 weeks to respond and provide a solution. So that's what we're sticking with. So I'm going to just stick with the policies and go forward with that. So anyways, let's get on with the Q&A portion. Let me pull the chat up here, and Streamlabs chat is like almost useless. Anyways, so post your questions in the chat. Stay away from homers and TiVo. That's my official reply right now. Stay away from homers / TiVo. There's way too many other brands. Like, I will recommend an ANET printer over the homers or TiVo. So just not a company I have much faith in, given the replies and other information that I've acquired as of last night, and then did my own digging. So I'll just leave it at that for right now. There will be a follow-up video. All right. So Derek says, when using 2 stepper motors in Ender 3 or CR10, should I capture / bind the Z lead screw at the top? This is a widely debated thing. I have machines with both. I don't think, like, this is my personal opinion, I don't think you should have it fully captured. I think the top should kind of float. But other guys say you want to fully restrict it. My reasoning for the top having some play, or being allowed to float in whatever is capturing it, is if your lead screw is not perfectly straight, it can wobble a little bit up top, whereas if it's restrained, that wobble usually presents itself into the print. So I would much rather the lead screw wobble on the printer and not translate that into the print versus having it tightly captured. That's my reasoning for it. Like I said, I have machines that I have both where they're free. I have a few that are captured. Like, if you have a belt linked system, usually it's fine. Like, I've got a couple machines here. I've got a machine here that it's got a capture, but the lead screws are straight. My CR10, I'm using just a printed capture with some bearings, but these are all, and my Ender 3 with the dual Z kit, but these are all ones that have straight lead screws and they have a belt linked. So the problem really comes about when your lead screws are weebly wobbly because they're bent. So another thing I've seen too is where people will put the capture on, or they'll print something to capture that lead screw, and it ends up pushing the lead screw out of alignment with everything else. So, you know, let's say down here the lead screw is this far, but up towards the top you got the capture and it pushes it out this far. So you can see the lead screw will be at a slight angle. So if everything's perpendicular, then you should be fine. But that includes the lead screw being straight. So if the lead screw is not straight, it's no longer perpendicular. So that's about that on that subject. Let's see, Jonathan Barnes. Tim, what G code do I need to lower the bed on an Ender 5 Plus when finished printing? I believe the height of that, I believe the height on that is a 350. I believe that would be a 350. I gotta double check, but basically you want to tell the Z axis, it's 400 actually, 400, 350, I'm thinking of the XY. So you would basically want to enter a G-code command to tell the Z to go to the 350 location if you want it to go all the way down. And that would be put in your starting or your ending G-code. I need to look that up. I don't usually deal with manually telling it to, I think it's like G90 something. G92. Yeah, so you could do a G92 Z 400 and that would put it down. I wouldn't put it less than 400 because if you have a bigger print, you could raise the bed and send it into the nozzle. I probably would tell it to do a G92X350, Y350, Z400. So that would then put your nozzle in the back right corner and then drop your bed down. So I will type that out in chat. G92X350, Y350, Z400. So that would go in your ending G code. So that will tell it move the head to the back right corner. That's where that printer's 350 location is. And then we're going to raise the bed. Now raise it, but in this case, when the Z height raises, the bed drops down because X and Y are static up top. So that's what you do. The G92 X350, Y350, Z400, and that will drop the bed all the way down, and it'll put the head in the back right corner. So that's what I would do. I'll probably actually do that on my slicer for my Ender 5 Plus. I got to put that machine back together. I had it taken apart for doing some upgrades and test fitting for design parts, which is why it's not operating. Other than that, it would have been operating if I hadn't messed with it. It's not broken. It's just disassembled. I like that. It's not broken. It's just disassembled. M. Poffenberger, or M. Poffenbarger. Either way, I'm probably saying it wrong. Any thoughts on the Ender 6 Core XY? It looks interesting. I haven't played with it, so other than that, I really can't comment too much on it. I've seen pictures of it. If it's actually a Core XY, the problem is I bought... that's actually one of the printers I actually disassembled and turned to parts was my Ender 4, which was a Core XY. It actually wasn't a Core XY. It was an HBot design, and it was terrible. So if they're actually doing a proper Core XY design and things are rigid, I think it could be a good machine. I think it'd be nice to have a affordable Core XY, like basically easy to build machine. I like Core XY design. I don't think it offers too much over your standard Cartesian ones, but it's a neat design. I like the idea of it. Those of you guys that don't know, a Core XY actually uses two motors with a belt system in the back corner. So you have your X and Y motor, but they're both attached with a belting to the carriage. And depending on which direction, whether a motor stays static or moves, it can actually... so if you were to hold one motor and turn the other, it would go on a 45-degree angle on the bed. But if you turn both of them, you can move it forward or backwards. It's a really cool kinetic system. I like it. It's intriguing. I think it's neat. I've had a few Core XY machines. I have one, but it's back at Project R3D, and I got to actually meet up with Joe to get that back from him. I have one of the Daedalus, or Daedalus. I think it's Daedalus is how you say it. I have one of those Daedalus machines, but I bought a beta unit, and he was putting some upgrades on it to bring it up to the retail release, and I just haven't had a chance to get it back from him. Nadav says, I ordered Tough Tube and it's 98 cm. Can you send me the extra 2 cm? Wait, really? They measure those all with a meter stick. Like literally pull it out, cut. If you're serious about that, I don't know if you're just trying to make a joke or not, but if it is short, send us a picture to our support and they'll send it out, and then someone's going to get yelled at if they're shorting tube. But there's no reason they should be shorting tube. They literally have a 1 meter metal stick bolted to the table. They pull the tube out, mark it, cut it, and that's it. Dominic says, PETG ripped a chunk out of my glass Crowley bed even though I put the vision miner on it. Do I need to worry about the similar problems with the Easy Flex 2? So here's the thing. If it still bonded, that meant your nozzle height was too low and the PETG pushed through that layer. PETG especially, it loves to adhere to surfaces, as you see, glass. It likes to bond to polycarbonate, it likes to bond to PEI, it likes to bond to bare glass. I'm assuming Creality glass you mean, but with the little lattice pattern on there. But if your nozzle height is too low, I personally run PETG a little bit higher than I would any other materials because it does have a tendency to bond. So the problem is if your nozzle height's too low, what'll happen is the filament as it's coming out of the nozzle will just push through the layer of whatever you have down, and then it will adhere as if nothing was there. So I usually will run a higher first layer height, not only thicker, but also physically higher. I'll use the baby stepping on the printer firmware and just put it up like 1 or 2 clicks and make sure it's sticking down. If it is, then I'm good. Because I have had PETG bond to glass. I've had PETG bond to PEI. I've had it bond to our easy mats. And every time it's bonded, it's because I didn't check the first layer height. So PETG is a nice material to work with, but it's very unforgiving if your Z height is set too low. So I always err on the side of, I'm going to run it a little bit higher. So not as much squish as you would with PLA or even ABS, but a little bit higher than that. But still not where the extruded material is rounded. You don't want your extruded material to be having a rounded appearance when it's on the bed. If it is, that means you're just kind of dropping the filament down. You still want it to be kind of flattened out. But like I definitely run my PLA and ABS a little bit closer to the bed than I would PETG because I know it's not going to permanently bond to the surfaces I'm printing on. Also, too, letting it release and cool down, especially with glass. When I used to use glass, I would actually stick the plate in the fridge or the freezer to let it kind of contract a little bit, and the Vision Miner stuff does like to release when it's cooled down. So if you also didn't let it cool down to at least room temperature, that's going to even give you more possibility or probability of it damaging whatever it is and not coming off cleanly. So the way I understand how the Vision Miner stuff and most other release agents is that they do help with, as it cools down, the part releasing from the bed that you're printing on easier. Let's see. Do I have a favorite nozzle for PLA? To be honest, brass, plated, whatever, they all seem to work just fine. I'm not a huge fan of steel nozzles, especially now that we have ones out like the copper plated ones. Like we have our Easy Flow, which are the copper heat treated ones with the like nickel non-stick plating applied to them. Steel PLA likes to stick to a lot, so I would probably stay away from that. And the only reason you'd be going to steel is if you want a cheap way to print abrasive materials. But I have found the PLA likes to stick to steel more than brass or the copper coated ones. My favorite all-around nozzle is the copper coated style ones, like our Easy Flow nozzles. There's multiple manufacturers that make these too. We have our own brand in-house here called the Easy Flow. They are more expensive. That's the only drawback to them. They're like $15 versus you can get brass nozzles for $1, steel ones for $2. But the reason I like the copper plated ones is that they conduct heat quicker than the brass, and they also can stand up to abrasives just fine. I've ran many rolls of carbon fiber through them and measured the diameter, and I've seen no change. So the plating does work really well. And I like that I can throw that in the printer. I can run anything through it, and I don't have to worry about, oh man, do I have an abrasive one? Do I have an abrasive nozzle in there, or abrasive friendly or resistant nozzle in there, or not? I just throw it in there, and I know that machine I can run whatever I want through it and not have to worry about it. Whereas if I have a brass nozzle and I'm going to run some abrasive stuff through it, I know I'm going to either need to change that nozzle after I'm done and hope it doesn't get chewed out enough to affect the print, or I'll have to change the nozzle out to something like steel or the plated ones. I've been using the plated ones on quite a few machines in here. And we have some of our print farm ones that when we do have special requests that need to print abrasive materials, we have those set up to do that. But most of the machines here just have standard brass nozzles in them. A couple have steel, and quite a few have the plated ones. So we have a good mixture of everything. The bottom line is, if you're not printing abrasive materials, the brass nozzles work just fine. I do like the other property of the plated ones that we have, that filament does not stick to it as easily as the brass or the steel. So why that's important is, if you have, shmoo on the nozzle, it usually will fall off instead of getting gunked up and coated. So it still does stick, but not as easily as to brass or even steel. I feel like steel nozzles like to collect filament a lot more than brass do. So, Paul the Texan, is the E3D Volcano good enough as an all-metal hot end, or should I spring for the Copperhead or the Mosquito? for an Ender 3 V2. I like the Volcanoes. I haven't played with the Copperhead or the Mosquito because I haven't found a need for it. I have the Volcano setups on multiple machines. I love them. They're great for getting stuff done quick. And they're relatively affordable. So we even have an upgrade kit for our Tough hot end, which is a V6 compatible hot end, to upgrade it to the Volcano style block. So I think you'd be all in for like $45 with the upgraded block and a bunch of nozzles. So, and we also have the easy flows in the Volcano size too. That's a really good combination. So like on my CR10 here, I have our Tough hot end with the high flow upgrade kit and a copper nozzle and a 50-watt heater. So not only does it heat up quick, but it also transfers that heat very fast. So it's a really nice combination for getting stuff done quick. If you're not doing really, really thick layer heights at a higher print speed, you don't really need to go to the Volcano block. The purpose of the Volcano style block is the heater sits in parallel with the nozzle. Okay, so we have a longer nozzle. We have the heater going parallel to it, and it's closer to it, so it heats up quicker. It has more thermal mass. That's the point of the Volcano style stuff. So if you're not doing higher speed printing at a higher layer height, it's not really worth it, but you can still do normal prints even at a point with a 0.4 nozzle on a Volcano. So you can switch the nozzle out, you can put a smaller one back in, and then it's just back to what you're used to. But if you don't have the need for doing, you know, big parts quick at a high layer height with a big nozzle, then it's really not that much of an upgrade at all. One could argue that maybe it's a little more consistent melting rate because we do have a longer melt zone. But other than that, I haven't noticed a huge difference for normal printing applications. Nemo Griff says, Cure has a plugin for a Z offset. I haven't messed with that. I would check and see how it works to make sure it's not doing something that could potentially break how you're expecting the printer to work. Depending on what it does. If it's just sending the M851Z and then the value for the offset, that's probably fine. But if you forget that that's there, you'll probably be wondering, like, why is my offset changing every time I run a print? Because it'll probably put in the starting code. Sorry, V-Rich. 2 quick questions. Just installed the Easy Board. Is it normal for a long beep when turned on? Yes, and that's in our FAQ. That long beep is from the pin being high until the firmware takes over, and then the pin gets pulled low. It's completely normal. And I've noticed some screens do it. Not all of them do it. It really depends on what buzzer is on that screen, because some of my Ender 3s do it, some of them don't. Some of the CR10 screens do it, some of them don't. But if you do hear the beep, it's normal. And even if you don't hear the beep, it just means your LCD isn't responding to that signal the same way that other ones are. And it's nothing to be worried about. Also, part fan running all the time. Seen an option. Well, if your part fan's running all the time, that usually means, and you should check by the part fan location, by those headers, there's 2 little Mosfets. If the part fan's on all the time, that usually means that those wires were shorted out at one point and now the Mosfet is stuck in the on state. So take a picture of that and send it to our support, because that is something we can usually fix. Sometimes it's just the Mosfet needing to be replaced, and I do have those on hand. Other times, depending on how severe the short was, it could also damage the pin on the processor, so that would mean the processor and the Mosfet itself for the fan would need to be replaced. So we're trying not to do too many board repairs. We do have options. So if like it was shorted out, like if that chip is, you know, physically damaged, that means it suffered a short. And the board would need to be replaced or repaired. I do have time for some repairs right now, or even just taking it in and sending you out a different one that's working. So, but if the part fan's on all the time, that usually means that it suffered a short and it's going to need to be repaired. So, and you also need to check your wiring too, because if you put another board in there without checking the wiring where there could have been a short, then you're just going to have the same thing happen to the next one. But usually what will happen is there's like a little bit of a wire or something where people spliced in a fan, and like one little strand touches the other side, and the current goes through, it burns up that, but now the MOSFET's damaged. So I would check the I would check your wiring too, because if you replace the board and the wiring still has an issue, you can end up damaging the board of the replacement as well. Top Hat Waffle. Let me see here. Sorry, I'm getting messages from Teams. Anyways, Top Hat Waffle says, any suggestions on improving heat transfer to a non-brass nozzle, like a compound or something? I don't really think so, because if you think about it, and someone feel free to chime in if you do have suggestions, but when you tighten the nozzle down, you're pulling those threads against the threads of the block. So if there's any play, they're now mashed together. So you got pretty good thermal conductivity there to begin with. I don't know if like a high temp thermal grease would really help anything. I've never seen any companies do that. I feel like if it did make a difference, we'd see companies doing that. I don't know. I know Slice Engineering has a thermal compound of some sorts, but I think that's for their heat break. I'm Googling it right now. Let's see. Boron nitride paste. Thermal paste for improving conduction. Acts as a release agent. Okay, so that's a benefit right there. It'll help it not bind up. It says it's stable up to 850 C in air, 1800 C in a vacuum. Usually include an applicator, coat the cartridge heater hole in your 3D printer in the heat block. I mean, if they're saying it'll survive the temperatures, I don't think it would hurt. But this seems to be for the cartridge, the heater cartridge, to improve conductivity from the heater cartridge to the block itself. So I'm just looking at this here. I'd say order a thing and give it a shot. I don't know if you're going to be like, wow, that's a what's the word I'm looking for? Like, wow, that's a huge difference, but I don't think it would hurt. Especially at that price, you could probably do a couple hot ends with that. V-Rich, I can shut the fan on and off. Oh, okay. So then your stuff's not shorted, V-Rich. You probably have a fan that's not responsive to the faster PWM control, and in the firmware there's an option. Well, in our firmware there's an option called fan fix, and what that does is that sets a slower PWM rate, so that way the fan can be controlled. So the problem is that some fans that have an auto restart function, like some of the original 5015 fans we have, like the version 1s, they had an auto restart function in them. And the problem is that the auto restart function, if you had sent it too fast of a PWM signal, it just wouldn't spin under a certain percent. But if you send it a slower PWM signal, then it will spin. So it's going high and then low versus high and low, and the thing's just like, I don't know what's going on, but we're not spinning up. But that should be in there. I'm going to pull the configuration files up here, but I believe that should be still an option in our firmware. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's called fan fix. So, and what that does is that just sets a slower PWM value at the firmware level, so you can still control it. For fan purposes, a slower PWM value works just fine. And if you don't use our firmware, what you can do to achieve the same result is you set the option called soft _PWM _scale to 1 from 0. And then you also define fan _soft _PWM. So those two options will set a slower PWM rate for the fan if you have a fan that doesn't spin up under 100%. Some of them will spin up under like 90 to 100. Other ones, it's 100 or 0. So, but the information still stands. If you do have a board where the fan's on all the time and you can't control it, then that indicates that MOSFET that's controlling the fan, and this is true for any board, not just ours. If that fan's always on or just doesn't turn on at all, that usually means that that MOSFET suffered a short, and most MOSFETs, when they're shorted, they will usually fail to the on position. So, in my experience, it's possible for them to fail off. It's also possible for them to fail on. In my case, I have had more MOSFETs fail in the on position than the off position. So, but I've also had both, but it's just something to be aware of. Let me see here. What else? Mark Gibson says, when I insert SD card, I can't get the machine to read it, so I need to switch off and on, and then it reads. Any ideas? I would try reformatting the card. It sounds like, well, actually, no. If you might have to hit some boards, you have to go to a knit SD is usually, if you're using a regular Marlin, a knit SD. In the later versions of Marlin, it'll say a knit media or something like that. In our firmware, we have it labeled attach SD. So if you put that in there, you have to go to the menu, hit attach SD, and then it'll pull the pins and see if there's a card there. If it is, then it will mount. But yeah. So anyways, let me see. Yeah, also try different cards. Some boards, like including ours, they're picky with some of the cheaper brand SD cards or just random ones. Like there's my little stash of cards here. There are all sorts of different ones. And some work great, some don't. Just try another card too. Let's see, what else? Oh, Scott's in the house. If you wind the nichrome onto the threads... Oh, he's talking about really old heaters before we had these little cartridges and it was actually a product. Scott's been doing this for a long time, where people are literally drilling their nozzles out of bolts. George Moody, release date for the KP3 firmware fix. Should be towards the end of this week. That update is going in with the Sunlu S8 update, so I have to get the Sunlu S8 completed, which is almost done. I literally just have to put the sensor offsets in for the OEM mount, and then it will be completed. If you want to try it yourself before it's officially released, it's on our testing branch on our GitHub. If you go to the GitHub for the unified firmware, there's two branches. There's 2.0.x and there's 2.0.x dash testing. The dash testing one is the one that has all my latest changes, including the KP3S fix in the initial settings for the Sunlu S8. But that's what I'm waiting on. I don't want to do like 2 different releases. I try to batch everything and do it every couple of weeks instead of like, oh, here's a new release, here's a new release, here's a new release. The only time we'll do like a new release is if you see a letter after a number in the version number, that means there was a small bug patch that like we didn't catch or something new, or it's a really tiny change that doesn't affect every single config. So, but when we do new printer editions or a major fix for something, then we'll do a full increment on the version number, so it won't have the letter appended after it. Let's see here. All right, I see Mark's reply. He said that I always use this function, but it no longer works. It sounds like that SD card might be failing, to be honest. Mark Gibson. It sounds like if the card was working for a while and now it's acting erratic, it sounds like that card's at the end of its life. SD cards don't really have that long of lives, especially the cheaper ones that come with the printers. That's one of the reasons I switch over to using OctoPrint, because I'm using higher quality cards in the OctoPrint to actually run the Pi, and then we're streaming the data over USB versus dealing with the printer's SD slot. It's also a lot easier because you can send the G-code files over your network to the printer, and you're not having to take a card out, put it in. Much also less wear and tear on the printer board's SD card, especially when you have machines now with like a lot of 32-bit boards where the SD slots use a flash. So if that slot gets damaged or worn out, you might not be able to update the firmware. So I personally, we use OctoPrint literally on every single printer here. Every single printer that's a machine that's set up and used regularly has OctoPrint on it. I highly recommend it. You can DIY it. You can go to octoprint.org. They have the image there, and you can build your own little Pi kit. We also have a fully set up turnkey solution called the Easy Pi Pro. That's on our website, and we also donate a portion of every single kit sold to the OctoPrint project. So we're not just like some of the other places that are just leeching off of it. We do give back to them. So we send them close to, it depends on how many we sell, but it's been anywhere from $400 to $600 a month that we donate to the OctoPrint project. So, and it's because of those sales. So every time we sell a kit, we donate to the OctoPrint project. Let's see here. 3D printing and painting. Jerry, when replacing a heater on the hot end, do you think people should use thermal paste? No, I never do. I never do. I don't think so. The only, I don't think it would hurt, but you have to use thermal paste that's rated. Like your standard computer thermal paste is not going to hold up to the hot end temperatures. That stuff that Slice Engineering, they claim up to 850 C. So, if it can handle the temps, it's not going to hurt, but it's also going to make more of a mess. I don't think you're going to see that much of a difference. Unless your hot end has terrible tolerances. In that case, maybe replace the heater block. Kelly Dolan says, any thoughts on a rhythmic noise from an extruder motor, even when not actively extruded or retracting, only when engaged? It sounds like your extruder is in, I'm assuming you probably have trinamic drivers on the board. If you have an easy board, you'll hear a slight noise from the extruder motor. Or even other boards, if you're using like our firmware, we also set like the SKRs into the correct mode, which is spread cycle, not stealth chop. There's two different modes that a TMC driver has. It has spread cycle and stealth chop. There's more than that, but those are the two main ones you'll use on 3D printing. So stealth chop is a lower torque, quieter version to move the motors, and that's what you run on X, Y, and Z. However, because the extruder requires more torque than the other axes, they actually push that filament through the nozzle. Even Trinamic, per their data sheets, this is not my opinion, if you look in their data sheets, they also say this, is that extruder motors, when using Trinamic drivers, should be in spread cycle mode, which is what we have our firmware set, because that's the correct way to do it. Also, in testing, when you run stealth chop on an E-motor driver, you can sometimes lose steps, and then it's not going to make an audible noise when it loses steps. It's just going to come out as under extrusion. So for the best consistency, if you're running a board that has a Trinamic driver, you should be running the E driver in spread cycle mode. Now, the alternative is if you have a board like Creality silent boards, where they don't have communication between the processor and the driver, where you can't set that mode, the alternative is you have to run a higher VREF to compensate for that loss in torque, but then it also makes the motor run warmer. So some people have had no issues running stealth chop on an E-motor. Me, on multiple different machines, I've had some run fine with it. I've had others where they lose steps. So in general, to get the best consistency, especially from like our board and the firmware we put out, we set the E-motor to spread cycle, which is what Trinamic specifically recommends. So pull their data sheet up on the 2208, the 2209. They specifically state that spread cycle should be used on extruder motors, not stealth chop. That's a fact. It's not my opinion. The company that literally makes the drivers says don't use stealth chop on your E-motors. Let's see. Andrew Massey. One of my printers is Anycubic Mega S. It's been a great, reliable machine. Yeah, I've said it before. Anycubic seems to make decent machines. Should I be concerned with thermal runaway? If so, is there a fixed... And oh, by the way, your EasyMat is fantastic. Well, I'm glad you like the EasyMat. 2, I believe Anycubic does have thermal runaway on their machines, especially the newer ones. One way you can check it is disconnect one leg of the heater cartridge, but Anycubic does like to put quick disconnects on their heater cartridges, so you might just have to unplug the heater cartridge, tell it to heat, and then it should kick in. In the last few machines I've tested from Anycubic, they do have thermal runaway enabled, and the Mega S is a newer machine. I do actually have a Mega S in a box sitting here, so I'll be able to test it a little bit. I would say it probably does, but you can test it by just disconnecting the heater cartridge, tell the printer to heat, and after a couple minutes, it should throw an error on the screen. Or if it has, I believe those have a touch screen, it could just go to 0. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it does, but I always test. you know, I believe that the term is trust but verify. Fenrix, any tips for using a direct drive upgrade? Just upgraded my Ender 5. Any settings recommendations? The main thing is you should be able to reduce your retraction by quite a bit. The reason you have higher retraction on Bowden systems or Bowden or whatever you want to call it is because of the slop in the tube. When you go to a direct drive, you're reducing the amount of distance between the nozzle and the extruder, which should mean you have less retraction length to do because there's less slop in the tube. So I would probably start out with your retraction at 1 millimeter, do a test print. If you get some stringing, bump it up by 0.2 until you get to that sweet spot. The problem also with running too high of retraction on a direct drive system, if you convert it from Bowden to direct drive, is that you could be running too high of a retraction rate and you can get jams then because it's pulling it too far back into the heat break. So you have to be aware of that. R Mills, I'm addicted to Ma because of you. Well, I can't really talk too much about that. Oh God. Because I have a problem too. Hang on. And I haven't got all of it. These are all my bottles. I'm well stocked. I bought 2 of their bundle packs on their Black Friday sale with the shaker cup. As you can see, I go this is the jumbo blender bottle. But I just got this just came in today. The blue Griffin told me the blue buzz was really good. It's actually really good. I still think though I like the green growl, which is like a apple flavor, but I also like apple. So, but yeah, I love it. It's like Top Hat waffles, like ooh caffeine. It's like G Fuel except it's not gritty and like they're smaller. There's not as much. It's more concentrated, I think, than G Fuel because like here's G Fuel. There's a little bit left in here. I used to do G Fuel, but I stopped buying them when they had concerns over lead in their mix. So there's that. Versus this. So like this is more concentrated. So I got this like, what the hell? This is so small. I'm used to this. Doesn't matter. It's actually pretty heavily concentrated so they can do smaller bottles, but I love it. I'm not buying energy drinks anymore. I literally just bought that. That should last me a couple months. I'm happy with it. But I got this is the blue one. What is it? What do they call it? Blue Buzz. That's what I have in here. So it's sugar free. So anyways, I love it. It's great. I like that it's not gritty. I don't like the grit that G Fuel has. This just dissolves. It's great. But Doug, you should definitely order some. Doug is Top Hat Waffle. He's my brother, and he is just as much of a caffeine addict as I am. I would highly recommend trying it. It's really good. I'm glad Tor, our support rep, who was in chat as BlazeB3D and RC, he's the one who told me about Ma, and I'm glad he did. So, but I do have an affiliate link with them, which I'm using the money from that to buy like little boards and stuff for doing projects and stuff on here. So if you're going to try it out, use the link in the description, and there's also a 10% discount code there. It's MAW10. So anyways, back to the questions. I got derailed there. Jerry, I'm going to give Jerry a shout out here. He said he's doing a live stream today at 2 p.m. Pacific on his channel, 3D printing and painting. All right, we're back. I'm going here back to this. All right, we're back. So, Drew Singer, OctoPrint for the win. 3D printing and painting. Does your laser have OctoPrint? It could, but it does not because I have a computer sit right next to it. So I have Lightburn on there, and that just controls it directly. And I have a remote access tool called AnyDesk on that, so I can actually do it from here. But you could use OctoPrint to control a laser that uses G code. Richard L. Gina from OctoPrint is amazing. She's awesome. Gina's a very good person. Lightspeed says the thermal paste is only needed on the thermistor for slice. The heater is toleranced perfectly. Already read that. Carried on. Thanks. Super helpful and relief. It's not something that sounds like a bad motor. Yeah. So like stepper drivers are weird. What a lot of these silent drivers do is they're not they're not actually technically less noisy. They're just shifting the frequency to a more inaudible range. Like I can hear sounds that the printers make that my wife can't. And vice versa. So it all depends on the frequencies. If you shift the noise level, it could still be there, but if it's outside of the audible frequency range that you're capable of hearing, then it's quiet to you. So it's some voodoo magic witchery that's going on here. R. Mills says, I missed the blue Easy Mat. Unpopular opinion, I like the black ones better. The blue ones, they didn't sell as well. I think people didn't like how bright they were. So, you know, we adjusted and remade them with a cleaner design and made them more subtle. So, still the same material. If you guys are wondering, the Easy Mat 2 that we have is the same material and adhesive as Easy Mat 1. The only thing that changed is what sizes we carry and the design and color of them. But they're the same grade Easy Mat you guys are used to seeing. They're the same exact supplier. Mike Hillier says, I try to print PETG and I get threads on the first layer shirt. I don't know what you mean. That question doesn't make. There's no retraction at all. How do you kill that kind of threading? I'm not sure what you mean by threading. Let's see. I just saw Top and Waffles comment. 45-ounce blender bottle. Hell yeah, that's what I mix it up in. Armel says, I mix them all with a little bit of water to make a syrup and then carb some water in my soda stream. Oh, that sounds really good. I thought about getting a soda stream. Dude, that sounds really good because then you basically made yourself like a little energy drink. Oh, big brain move. Big brain. DeWitt Tim's in the house. The other John Mack. Hi, other Tim. Dave Petzel. We used to do Celestial Seasonings Red Zinger. I don't know what that is. What is that? Is that like a drink? I have no idea. Let's Google it. Oh, it's a tea. That's caffeine free. Yeah, the dog is here. She's being super helpful, as you can see right there. Top at Waffle. Side note, arc welder on 1284p boards works well with G2/3 enabled and arc segment set to 0.5. I'll have to look in that. Ping me on I know you're not on Telegram, but Doug, ping me on Discord with your findings. I did want to start playing with that arc welder plugin on OctoPrint. Those of you guys are not sure what arc welder is it takes a file, and if it's got a bunch of little moves to do a curve, it'll mark them, it'll combine them so there's less moves so you get smoother printing, and it's technically reducing the resolution, but it's so small you don't even notice it. Tripod, who is this guy? I am no father. Let's see here. R. Mills, I think I missed the response to my earlier question. He said, when I said the stock Ender 5 Pro board in my printer and changed the tough extruder, it would make an awful sound of retraction. When I changed the easy board, it went away. It was probably losing steps, depending on how fast your retraction was. Or the VREF was set too low. Coffeeology, no question, but wanted to let you know I flashed your firmware on my Ender 3. Well, that's good. Hopefully it went smoothly. Let's see here. Do it, Tim's. What you're saying is my dog can hear all my silent printers. Our cats, if I bring the cats out here, they never like the sound of the printer. So I'm wondering if they can hear things that we can't. I mean, obviously I know cats can hear stuff that we can't. But yeah, I mean, unpopular opinion, I like the sound of the stepper motors, to be completely honest. It doesn't bother me one bit. I like the noise. It's a little, I don't know. It's a little unsettling when the printer's too quiet, but that's just me. I'm weird. The snowboard blind border says, can you tell Teaching Tech to modify his video showing plugging your filament sensor directly into the board? I think this will kill the board. Yeah, we even say it on the product page. Don't plug our Easy Out filament sensor directly into any board other than our Easy board, and it has to be in the correct orientation. The reason for that is we use a standard off-the-shelf sensor to keep costs down, and they work well. The thing is, though, the pinout of them doesn't always line up with every single board. So that's why we have those Easy Out boards to go along with the sensor, because they put things where they're supposed to go. They put the ground where it's supposed to go, they put the voltage where it's supposed to go, and they put the signal where it's supposed to go. So, yeah, I don't know why. I'm going to have to look. Post in the video description, there's a link to our Discord server, the Snowblind Border. And I know someone asked a question on our website through the question feature on the product. I specifically told them, do not plug it in, and then link them to the kit they need for the printer they mentioned they were on. Because if you plug that in, like on the Creality boards, the signal and the 5-volt are actually flipped versus what the cable's pinned to. So if you plug that in, depending on the state of the switch, I believe it when filament is out, it's actually just going to ground out 5-volt to ground. Whereas if you get the actual kit we recommend for that board, which is the one that goes on the LCD header, that puts everything in the correct position. Same thing for like the ones for the MKS boards or the SKR boards. There's a little adapter board with a short cable, and that flips around the pins so they go to the correct positions. You could repin the cable, but unless you are paying attention, you know exactly what to repin to what, you're better off just getting the kit that has a board, because we've already figured out all the wiring so it actually works correctly. There was another guy in our Discord server that bought a sensor that was just some random sensor off Amazon. It was the same pinout as ours, and he plugged it into his Big Tree Tech board, and because their voltage regulator doesn't have short circuit protection, it was just shorting it out, and the board was just trying to power through it, but it was causing the voltage to go crazy. So when you guys are buying filament sensors, whether, you know, especially from other places that don't have everything figured out, be like, this is the one you need for this board, this is the one you need for that board, these are the accessories that go along with it. You got to make sure you're connecting everything correctly. So, you know, the voltage to voltage, ground to ground, signal to signal, because if you flip any of those, you could damage your board. And we are getting wrapped up here, so go ahead and if you guys have any more questions, post them now. I'm about to do my little thing where I post a line in chat, and that will be the cutoff, because we run these for an hour. I like these to be a little bit shorter, because I do have things to keep doing. Dominic first said, a Celestial Seasonings is used to make hippie tea. Got it. David, we added mushrooms to it. Why am I not surprised, David? I feel like you had a wild childhood. Coffeeology. It took 6 hours to flash firmware, but it was me trying to figure out how to set up the bootloader. We have a video for that with pinouts. But yeah. Anyways, I don't see. I'm gonna hit the enter button in a second here. Send that. Let's see. Yeah, our opening video actually has sampled sounds from an actual stepper motor. My buddy Josh, who runs From Zero to Z, which is a little project he does, a little band. He actually sampled stepper motor moves and then put it into the theme song. So I don't know if you guys heard that, but it's in there. So there we go. There's cutoff, and because we got 5 minutes left. DeWitt does not like how quiet printers are. Jonathan Barnes, when are you getting more MK8 0.4 Easy Flow nozzles? We are doing an inventory order later tonight, so probably in a couple weeks. So, the snowboard dude that was talking about the filament sensor, I see your link. I appreciate you posting it in Discord. I really do. I will follow up with Michael. Chris Kenny just ordered more caffeine and nicotine. Chris Kenny, I think that's who you are. I got your order. Chris Kennedy runs a e-juice company, and he had a Black Friday sale, so I bought like 20 bottles of it, and they're in my drawer. I got them. Pretty quick shipping, too, on that. Sean Connolly says, Tim, Do you have a preferred laser engraver setup? Was looking at the BMO. By the way, love the mat and the Easy AB amongst other things I've got from you guys. I'm not a professional on lasers, and by any means. I have a K40, which the K40 is like the go-to Chinese laser cutter. But like the Chinese printers, it does have its downfalls, and you need to do a lot of research. My thing is there's some engravers. I'm not a huge fan of the diode engravers. I've had a couple of them, and they've all died on me after about 4 or 5 months, whereas the K40 is like 3 years old now, and it still goes. Eventually, the CO2 tubes do burn out, but I don't use mine too much, and it's been running great. Now, I did upgrade it. I took its stock board out. A lot of people take the stock board out, and they'll put in what's called a cohesion 3D board. They have one called the laser board, and they are a little expensive. They're like 200 something bucks. But it's a drop-in replacement for the K40. So you literally take the old board out, put it in, and you can use it then with Lightburn instead of the crappy software it comes with. But I know if you're looking for stuff on lasers, Jim over at the Edge of Tech has been doing a lot of stuff with laser engravers. He's got some proper like CO2 lasers, and he also has some diode lasers. So if you're looking for laser content, check over at the Edge of Tech. I just happen to be wearing his hat too. He's been doing a lot of stuff with lasers. He's been doing some really cool stuff. So if you haven't checked out the Edge of Tech, I highly recommend it. Jim and Lindsay are good people over there, and he does some awesome videos. So, and he's been on a laser kick lately. So, but that's it. That's it. Armil says, I'm trying to see. Yeah, so the people get thrown off by the bootloader Uno flashing. So here's why the flashing of the Uno LED in the video is different from the ones on the boards you get from us. So typically when Uno boards are made, they flash a sketch on it that's a blink sketch that blinks the onboard LED on and off. Depending on who flashed it, it could be a slow blink, or like ours, they're a faster blink. As long as that LED, when you power the Uno on, is blinking, it's ready to accept the programmer sketch to turn it into a programmer. So, but anyways, oh yeah, there's a mini Gerbil for 89. The Gerbil is an 8-bit board. I had a Gerbil. I didn't like it. I had issues like it literally had like bodge wires on it. Whereas it just didn't work. So I went with the cohesion board. So, but that's about it. I appreciate everybody stopping by. I hope you guys learned something. We're coming up here on, the 1 hour mark. And anyways, I hope you guys stay tuned. And there will be some more printer streams coming up this week or weekend because I have quite a few. I'm also probably going to be doing one where I'm just working on a machine. So anyways, everybody, I hope you have a great day. And as always, happy printing.